Thank you for joining. I'm going to do some quick verification here and make sure that I'm on. I think we're good there. And we're good there. Okay. Cool. All right. Without further ado, yeah, so I found out that today is the anniversary date of Real Genius. Sorry, I just got something in my eye right as I started, man. Wouldn't you? Just my luck. Something flies into my eye the minute this thing starts. But hello, everybody. But yeah, the film Real Genius, I guess, was released 36 years ago. Those unfamiliar, it's a movie that stars Val Kilmer, this guy Gabe Jarrett, which again, my name is Gabe. So again, I don't see too many Gabes in acting. Gabe Jarrett was one, and Gabe Kaplan, who played Welcome Back Kotter, was another. But I don't know that many famous Gabes as far as actors go in general. So anytime I see the name, it always raises an eyebrow, even though I know it's not really uncommon. But you know, again, I pay attention for it for obvious reasons. Okay. And then Martha Coolidge directed it. Martha Coolidge did a lot of iconic 80s films. She was known for Valley Girl, that had Deborah Foreman and Nicolas Cage. It kind of started the career of Nicolas Cage. And it really did sort of, like, I guess you could say, sort of popularize the whole, you know, like, oh my God, like totally, like, you know, gag me with a spoon, you know, like whatever, you know, that kind of talk that got popularized in the 80s and, well, hasn't really ever died down the more I think about it. There is still some variations on Valley Girl talk out there. It's a little bit like the movie Idiocracy. It's not so much that Valley Girl talks anymore. It's just that it's integrated with all the other forms of slang into one master codex of urban dictionary slang that nearly most people of a certain age group almost always are in the know on. And I guess it seems almost like the further you would get away from the core demographic that understands the urban dictionary intrinsically, the more words are omitted from your particular vocabulary from within that. There's a whole bunch of things on there that I'm like, going, really? I didn't know it meant that. But yeah, there you go. All right. So Martha Coolidge basically was kind of known for doing these kind of iconic 80s films. Valley Girl was one of them. Real Genius, another. I'm trying to think. God, why am I drawing a blank suddenly? There was one really kind of off one called The Joy of Sex it's not a very good quality 80s like sex comedy, to be frank with you. I mean, if you're going to go in like well, I mean, Valley Girl, I wouldn't necessarily call a sex comedy. That's more like a romantic comedy. Joy of Sex is this bizarre, sophomoric, weird movie that I don't even understand it. That's another Martha Coolidge one. And then, yeah, it's just a lot of films that had like a lot of those sort of popular actors that you saw in the 80s, and they never seemed to come back after that kind of thing. But Real Genius, I would say, and Valley Girl were probably two of the biggest films that Martha Coolidge did back in the 80s. I know there was bigger ones, guys. I'm sure people will argue that point, but Real Genius in particular, though, has always impressed me. To this day, as an adult, I liked it. I liked it when I was a kid. It's really held up over the years quite well, I think. Spoilers, potentially, folks, if that bothers you. I'm a bad person to watch their material because nearly everything that I do will involve spoilers of some sort of the plot. Let's give a quick review, though, of why I think Real Genius is worth your watching, so that in case you want to just like pause this now, go watch it someplace and then come back. All right. The opening sequence of it involves literally a group of guys. So I'm not telling you a whole lot here that you won't find out right away. The whole opening sequence, the first 5 minutes, is a presentation for a weapon called the crossbow. The crossbow is a a laser beam combined with a mirror that can basically aim a fine beam down anywhere on Earth very precisely and vaporize a human target. And instantly, it's not like it's a slow cook. This is like a beam goes, and the person is just burned up and turned into ash. And they call it the crossbow. And so the plot line effectively involves these. You're aware from the get go. The CIA. This is their. It is their goal to design this weapon. They're putting out presentations for it. They just need the intellectual property to be completely realized in order for it to become a weapon that's into fruition or whatever, right? And so then it immediately jumps into that the real plot line is that the CIA isn't getting this technology from anywhere. They're literally using a bunch of students from a school, not unlike an MIT, something of that sort, some type of technical college where a lot of geniuses go to thrive effectively. So, like an MIT type school or college, but with a specialty in techs and sciences. Then the plot of it basically involves, you have one guy played by Val Kilmer, who was one of the youngest students to ever be admitted there. So he's been there since before he was even ready to be in college. He was there since teenage years. And you kind of see how he's sort of like, grown into somebody who kind of screws off a little bit and doesn't take anything that seriously, but he's still, and obviously he's a genius. And then there's another guy played by Gabe Jarrett that enters the college, and he's going to be paired up with this guy played by Val Kilmer, so they can kind of show him the ropes and everything like that, how things work around the college. And then they're going to be working on a project together, so they can be both working on this laser. And so you learn effectively that this college isn't just a bunch of geniuses. It's kind of a way that the CIA is tricking the students into designing their weapons for them by making the professors give them these goals that say, well, you're not going to graduate unless you achieve this innovation. And so the students will work, and, make sure that they get the end result. And then the professor winds up just taking the technology and handing it over to the CIA as his own invention. And then they kind of just show you, without giving too much detail, guys, that's the basics of the plot. And then you kind of see how they process this knowledge, once, obviously, you guys are probably figure out they're going to become aware at some point that this is happening. So therein lies what goes on from the plot there. You have to kind of like, the whole moral play of what goes on. Once they learn this has happened, how do they address it? What do they do? There's also other things that I think are pretty relevant to it. The film has scenes that involve technology that's consistent with artificial telepathy. There's a gag or a trick, I guess you could say, that they play where one of the characters has a lot of dental work with metal in it. And so they find a way to wire and implant inside, like they gas him. They basically put in a sleeping gas under his door while he's sleeping. They break into his apartment, and they basically give him dental surgery that uses his dental work to put in an antenna that'll make it seem like the audio they're feeding into a microphone 2 or 3 doors down is literally coming from inside his head. Something they call voice to skull. I've heard that term used by people. Now, that's what is in the film Real Genius, right? It's like an insight into that. Yeah, back in the 80s, they knew these things could happen. It was just a matter of some hacks. If somebody has enough metals and the right kind of metals inside their mouth already, maybe from some previous dental work or current dental work, there's ways that you can do things like make them pick up a radio station of sorts. And for those who doubt the validity of those types of things, I would just say, well, you can probably find a lot of articles. I'm going to start doing some research on this, guys, so I'm not just pulling these stories out of my head, because I know that they're true. I'll give you an example. There was I'm from, for a while at least, I spent about over a decade near the Hanford Nuclear Reservation. And those who are familiar with that area, you might know about a radio transmitter that's off of Canal Drive, kind of near Columbia Center, the main shopping mall. It's a little bit between there and like Edison, I think. Yeah, somewhere between there and Edison. I know that's kind of a broad area between Columbia Center Boulevard and Edison off of Canal. And then um, on the south end of Canal, somewhere around there, I think kind of closer to Kellogg, in addition to the radio station that's over there, there's also just like this other antenna mast that's out there. And I remember that it was like an AM radio station for a number of years. And so people that lived in homes that were near the radio station or were in line of sight to certain antennas on the radio station would pick up the radio station programming on things like their toaster, like hearing the radio broadcast come from something that should not even pick up a radio station. And for some strange reason, through this magical cocktail of the right alignments of just enough power into the right metals in the right way, yeah, people weren't just listening to radio. It was pumping the conservative radio station. And so the people that were like not into like Rush Limbaugh and things like that were having to listen to Rush Limbaugh in their toasters if they lived inside an apartment or at a house that was near this radio transmitter. It was kind of a known thing. So I'd be, again, I'm sure there's a better technical explanation for it than, metals, blah, blah, blah. But I just thought that was worth mentioning, that things like that do happen. People will start to pick up the actual voices from the radio stations and things that were not designed to pick them up. It was, again, the right cocktail of the metals relevant to the proximity of the tower, the power of the tower relative to the metals that it interacted with that were close to the person that heard it. It just rebroadcast it and then people could hear it. It's trippy, right? All right. So you have that kind of as a thing. All right. We'll get to that topic soon. Yeah. I would definitely want to talk about Henry Silva here, but I'm going to start with the real genius, and because I want to play a thing about something that I think is going on, folks. And I think there's some filmmakers that I don't know if they knew why they were doing it, but I think there was a few different ways that it worked. I think that there's certain filmmaking production teams that did nearly everything, even though it's entertainment and packaged as such. Nearly all of their material was for defense project purposes, relevant to timeline technology and things consistent with what was learned from real military programs, nothing fiction, guys. I'm talking about Project Rainbow and things that were close to Rainbow, like Talent. Yeah, I mean, you're even getting into things that are MK Ultra-ish. And when you're going there, I don't like to use that term with this one, though, because I think that those things are less of a factor here. But it's still relevant, all that, because, when we get into Henry Silva, we'll talk more about those things. But what I'm thinking here, folks, is that, and again, it's been said to me, but, you can read stories and have things said to you over and over again, but you're not going to understand it until you really see the science clearly over and over again. And you really take the time, I think, to research it at the level of research and not just at a level of like just being passively entertained. And again, some of these things are quite entertaining, and they're actually, look, they're not all these the things that are here that are bad. Real Genius, I think, is actually a good quality film. And I would say most of the classic television work that Henry Silva did is extremely high quality. Where it gets a little bit more interesting is where you get into the lower budget, lower quality, nearly pointless productions that you don't even know why some of these movies ever even came to fruition or exist. Some are really low budget to the point of just being absolutely ridiculous. They have strange body counts, bizarre dialogue that you feel like has another purpose besides the surface meaning. I mean, the lines that they say are just so bizarrely synchronistic sometimes, the things that happen to me while I'm watching it. It's a little weird, guys. It's like, say somebody just says a random line in a film that you know doesn't really move the plot line along at all. It's like one scene that was placed there for a few people to have a bit of dialogue, and then you notice that it synchronizes with something that you're doing right there at that moment at that time, and it makes you kind of go, all right, these things happen, right? And you'll think that once or twice, and then the three times and four times. But then when it just keeps happening over and over again, pretty soon you really have to start just kind of going like, all right, I'm not losing my mind here. There's definitely some things that are synchronizing in ways that feel like it doesn't seem like it's just a Fibonacci sequence. It doesn't feel like it's purely something that's just because you're related to somebody, maybe, or you have some strange connection. I don't know. All right. But I have some material that I've done on this and why I think there's scientific reasons why it happens, why you get synchronicity events, and why you line up and correlate with certain things. All right. So for example, yeah, so Jesse, mentioned that they think that I resemble Henry Silva. It's interesting that you say that, guys, because I mean, like, that you say that, Jesse, because I don't know for certain what's going on. Here's what I will tell you. All right. And I don't want to violate anybody's privacy here, guys, and I don't think this does it. It's just that I do have being honest with you, because I wouldn't want somebody to like look into my things and say, are you being cheeky? Because I'm not. But I'm being straight up with you when I say that, and I don't know why this would be not the truth, or if it is, or if it's just a coincidence. I don't know. And I'm not going to suggest that it's anything but the truth. All right. Because I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I do in fact have a great uncle on the Silva side that is in fact named Henry. I have met him. He does not look like Henry Silva, the actor. So I'll just be straight up with you, those who made that comment. Now, that being said, looking at it purely objectively as an outsider looking in, I'm telling you, though, that if you took the actor Henry Silva and placed him next to the ones that would be in that same, like, he would line up like a sibling. He would look like the other ones that have the name. So it's confusing to me, because I literally have a relative with that name, but I've met them and they don't look like that, Yet the person who's the actor, if you line them up with the others, I would almost say the actor looks more like the rest of them than the person that I met and was introduced to me as such person. And I'm not suggesting shenanigans, guys. It's just I'm just being straight up. I'm being real with you. I would look at him and be like going, yeah, he could be my great uncle, sure. Because he looks a lot like my grandmother did, and he looks a lot like one of my great aunts. They do look alike. So I can't deny that. And then I had this whole weird thing going on with a Chevy Chase. And I've always felt like if you look at the early work of Henry Silva and look at like the early work of Chevy Chase, especially the films he did in the late 70s, like Foul Play, or something like in the early 80s, like he was doing his features before he got deep into his career were kind of like Henry Silva. You would almost think that Henry Silva and Chevy Chase were related. So I thought at times like I looked a little bit like Chevy Chase when I was like in junior high years, especially. I had facial expressions. I had a lot of things, the way my hair flips, hair patterning and things like that, very similar. On top of the fact that I always just felt really close to Chevy Chase's work. It always made me laugh. I liked watching it in repetition. It always felt like a close part of my childhood. So I don't know what's going on, man. I'm just rolling with things and trying to figure it out as I'm doing the research. But what I've learned, though, is that that there's people, I think, that were doing projects that would have just been about timeline information. And so an actor, I think, could have actually made a career out of doing timeline films and television series, because it would be a core focus of what that person's material is. They're kind of like a person that would almost be like on hire and always be known like, okay, we need you to be a reliable person that we can come to do these television series and these things, and just, just get yourself into it. And yeah, you're going to probably notice some patterning, when you do an appearance on The Outer Limits. Your character name on The Outer Limits is going to have a bridge to your character that you're going to play when you do an episode of The Twilight Zone. And when you, as an actor, do that episode of Twilight Zone, there's going to be a connection between your other appearance on The Outer Limits. And we're going to make both of those character names bridge over to a movie that you do that's, connected to our same production team. You start noticing this a lot with certain actors. And it's not just Henry Silva. Robert Duvall is in this group. Henry Silva is in this group. Robert Culp, I've noticed, is in this group. Sally Kellerman. A lot of actors and actresses, guys, that if you're newer, like if you're a person who's like, I don't know who most of the newer actors and actresses are, guys. I don't follow TMZ. Most of the TV series I don't watch. So I don't know who the new people are. I'm not that into it, but I really do like following some of these classic things now. Honestly, guys, the quality of the work, even though I'm doing it for research, I have to say the quality of the work as entertainment is pretty top notch when you start getting into The Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, and Alfred Hitchcock elements of all this. And that's what all these people have in common that I've noticed that have very significant timeline revelations and connected plot lines is they're together. They work very, very much on the same projects with the same producers, the same writers, and a lot of them seem to know each other through their acting relationships and probably must know each other, I'm guessing, probably outside that, because they just work together so often. In addition to the fact that like guys like Henry Silva were connected to the Rat Pack. He was kind of, you think about it, Henry Silva is a bit of an extension of the Rat Pack in a way. He was in Ocean's 11. He was in, Manchurian Candidate. He actually fights with Frank Sinatra in the Manchurian Candidate. I think he played Fu Manchu. So, I mean, again, that's another thing about Henry Silva. He's got this Italian background, but he plays people of all these different ethnicities. He'll play a Central American, general, and then he'll play a guy who's Chinese American. Then he'll play a person who's, Mexican or whatever. I mean, it's just all over the map. He does Italian action films. He plays a lot of hitmen. The Alfred Hitchcock series has a bunch of stories that are connected to him. And one of the Alfred Hitchcock episodes, Henry Silva plays an actor or a hitman named Harry Silver. So think about that, Henry Silva, and it's really weird actually. So hang on, Henry Silva, Harry Silver. This is an Alfred Hitchcock episode. But they do things like this. I just put up on the screen here. Henry Silva plays Harry Silver. These are like ciphers when you really get down to it. They're codes and they're cryptograms. And I don't want to go into a whole. I can do that another time, guys. I'm not ready for it tonight. I really just want to unpackage some of the things that I've been learning here, so you don't think that I'm just sort of disappearing off into La La Land. It's when I get into this type of research, yeah, it's a little bit abstract and strange to explain to people on the outside. I think it's a little bit hard to talk about how you can learn things this way, but it does. Things all start to connect. So sorry, I kind of got thrown off track a little bit, even though, yes, I am talking about Henry Silva tonight. I wanted to do that story about Real Genius and play that article for you guys, because I did do some research on that. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to show you some slides and things like that from my Twitter posts. They kind of show you the weirdness going on with Henry Silva, and I'm going to get that all ready to go. Because I want to go a little bit deeper into that. I know I did it about a week ago or so. I did a whole thing on The Outer Limits and the galaxy being, and one of the episodes. Actually, I didn't get that deep though into Henry Silva and that thing. So tonight's going to be more about that, I think. But yeah, guys, this whole thing with them, I've been researching for a while. I really did feel strongly that there is some strange connection to him, because Henry Silva's just been in. Let's take a look at his resume. I'll put it on the screen here for you. All right. So this is like a movie he did with Elizabeth Montgomery, who was Samantha on Bewitched. It's called Johnny Cool, again, where he plays a hitman. You can find scenes from this, and I think the entire film, actually. No, wait a second. That's a Secret Invasion. Sorry. Different movie. What's trippy about Henry Silva, you guys, is he didn't just do movies like about gangsters and things like that. He did movies about like deep underground Nazi bases being infiltrated. He did a couple films that involved like infiltrating the Nazis, or especially relative to underground bunkers. A lot of these sort of Italian hitman films, whether he was doing like Italian productions or just simply like playing an Italian gangster within some American production, it was a common theme for him very, very frequently. Yeah, this is Johnny Cool. So those familiar, that's Elizabeth Montgomery from Bewitched. Doo-ga-doo-ga-doo. You know, wiggles the nose and makes the spell happen. Oh, he was in Dick Tracy. I believe this is Ocean's 11. Yeah, that would be him right there. So Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra. There's Henry Silva right there. So to give you guys some background, that's Henry Silva right there. Sammy Davis, Frank Sinatra. So you could see he was kind of an extension of the Rat Pack. And then he was doing like a lot of sci-fi and horror films in the late 70s. He was in Buck Rogers playing the character Kane. And he played the character Kane frequently. It wasn't just once that he did. I think he had at least three different story arcs on three different series where he played Kane, which is consistent with like the Bible, Cain and Abel. Yeah, there's Above the Law. Somebody mentioned that in the chat here earlier. So again, he plays Steven Seagal's adversary. Jayhawkers, more with the Rat Pack. Oh, this is Cannonball Run too. Again, guys, I told you before, like no one wants to believe this, but guys, but I'm telling you, Cannonball Run 1 and 2, Smokey and the Bandit 1 and 2 are both timeline movies. They've got all this information in them, and I know they like. Why would they be in these ridiculous movies with race cars and things like that? Those are the best ones to put them in. I mean, you'd expect it the least too, but I'm telling you, these movies are highly synchronistic, and the fact that Henry Silva's in Cannonball Run 2 says a lot to me. So again, getting this is oh yeah, guys, he played a villain to Chuck Norris. Code of Silence. That's from him earlier in his career. That's Johnny Cool with Samantha Montgomery, or rather Elizabeth Montgomery. Yeah, that's the poster for it. The blood feud that makes America's underworld quake with terror. Headline: Hot, the terror behind Cosa Nostra, the Brotherhood of Crime. All right. Let's take a quick look at his resume. Sorry about that. Hang on. Moving so slowly. Sorry about the lag here, folks. All right, there he is. So this is where I kind of got a little bit more interested in Henry Silva. You know, I hadn't. It occurred to me like a couple years ago that this was a lead worth following. That there was something going on with his work, but um, let's see, where was it? When I saw him in, like, where is it here? Sharky's Machine. This is when it really, really like started to freak me out. And I'll show you really quick what that's about. All right. So this is where things get interesting, and I'm going to get back to Real Genius in a second, guys, because the thing I've noticed is that there's a strange connection between where you're situated geographically, and the way events synchronize within a spiral loop of film. Film is like celluloid film printed into a spiral loop, or when stored on a magnetic drive, if it's like shot on digital. Almost every one of these processes involves storing the image somehow on a process that puts it into a reel, a spiral, or a loop of some sorts where it sticks to, like the celluloid material or whatever. Okay. And so it occurred to me that that's what causes a lot of synchronicity. It's not always that it was intentional or that they must have meant it just for me or whatever. And so knowing the difference between when it could be potentially a timeline drop, maybe, or when it's just simply synchronicity, I think is challenging. And I think that's one of the reasons why certain actors were placed there almost like individual codex or a cryptogram. Like their work as a whole, whether they're conscious of it or not, is bridging a whole series of data together like a cryptogram or a puzzle. It's like the work of Henry Silva bridges a much larger work together and the puzzle pieces fall together. And then this was getting very, very obvious to me that there was some connection between the way that information lands and arrives at you and relative to your geographic location. Because about a year ago to date, actually, almost like exactly a year ago, I was in Atlanta, and it was never my intention to be in Atlanta, let alone get stranded in a hotel airport in Atlanta for a few months. I had never had that in the plans. It kind of sucked, but I mean, things could have been worse. But I just made that time as useful as I could and did a lot of research. And some of it just wound up involving just looking deeper into the works of certain filmmakers. And I realized that there was some magical cocktail about the location that I was in relative to geography. What are the materials that were underneath me in the soil? Where was I specifically? What kind of energy was I tapping into? Well, I was at the Atlanta airport. I was literally on the outskirts of the airport on the south end in a Howard Johnson hotel. And I was on the 6th floor of this Howard Johnson on the top floor. And my room faced the Atlanta airport runway. And I could literally look at the airport control traffic tower. Everything could see me and I could see everything. It was actually, as far as full metal disclosure goes, it definitely had its benefits. I was able to actually display quite a bit of my disclosure information, almost like a television show, from my window on the 6th floor. And that's what I use those types of things for. If I'm kind of stuck or stranded or something like that, I'll just kind of go, all right, fine. I'll just try to do whatever I can. and I do what's called full metal disclosure, and I have all of this material that I do, and I'll enable the subtitles and make sure that they're cleaned up as well as I can get them cleaned up, and make sure they look, presentable. And then I just aim it out the window. And that way, if somebody just wants to aim a scope in and review the show, they can do it from a television that I have in my hotel room. And, again, and I had proximity to like an airport, tower and everything like that. And I was like, well, this is the perfect place to do this. This is great. The only downside was that there was no slider. It was just, glass. So during the day, it was almost worthless because of the glare. And even at night, it had limited usefulness because of how much lights were shown. But I was told, and I kind of did a test of my own, you can see in. So I knew it was valuable for that reason. And so I'll just show you really quick. Oh, hello, Lisa. How you doing? Thank you. Welcome to the stream. I appreciate you joining. Yeah, so let me show you something really quick so that I'm not just babbling here about this. This was where I was right here. And I know that's not a very good diagram, but if you know where Atlanta is, I was basically right there on the south end. I should get a better map than this, guys. But effectively, there's this town called, I think it's College Park, is the first town that's really attached on the south end of the airport. And so I wound up kind of just stuck there waiting to get a airplane out with the hopes that I would be leaving, and it never happened. And so, again, I wound up getting back to the West Coast eventually and everything like that. But that's a whole nother story. The point is though, that while I was in that hotel, the synchronistic events and the things that I was learning about, the way like your behavior can trigger events, can make things more magnetic, can pull information in more. And it was all really good. I mean, it was positive reinforcement. It was one of the only times, I think, in recent memory, it's like a flip switch with my material when I was in Atlanta, where I'd finally had this revelation that having faith in people, that loving people and caring about people at a pretty deep level, understanding people, believing in people, having faith in people, programming others with belief and faith instead of cynicism, looking for them to be their best, hoping that they're going to be their best, giving them what it takes to make them become their best on their own, but always having the support that they need, I guess. And what do I classify that as? For me, when I got to Atlanta, just the fact that I had arrived there the way that I did, and it was all just a mistake and things were just synchronizing and lining up, it made me just understand the power of love and believing in people and having faith in people. And not always, I guess you could say, thinking that everything has to be perfect at every given moment, at every given time for whatever things. That, I don't know, I guess the way things had all lined up at that moment, I just stopped thinking about like all the way that negative things line up, and I started looking for all the ways that information is also drawn magnetically to the love frequency, that it's drawn very organically to acceptance, and that there's a momentum to love and acceptance that has a magnetism all of its own, that the repulsion of fear and the repulsion of anger is a really strong and powerful way to create predictable movements. If you can be repulsive to somebody, you can pretty much guarantee they'll go in the opposite direction. When somebody's or some group or some entity wants to prime you with being like, the point is to send you in the other direction. It's pushing you in the other direction. And so that's fear, that's rage, and that's anger. And what I've learned is that if you really want information, to flow towards you, and if you want to solve problems, that acceptance and love as a behavioral method really does get you further. It's a little bit like they say, it's almost like sugar, a little bit of sugar will get you further than whatever. You can flash a gun at somebody, sure, that'll get a result. But if you just sit down with a person and ask them, for their help, well, hell, you may get 10 times better results than you had if you had just been like menacing, threatening, or repulsive, or just intentionally, um, you know, um, what do you want to call it? Offensive. And so all I can tell you guys is that I don't consciously go out of my way to be like that to people or anything else like that. I mean, if I'm, if I err or something like that, I just simply err. I'm not saying that for any other reasons, guys. It's just, um, I'm talking about like when you're researching things and you're looking for information. All I've learned is that the flow of acceptance and love is a lot stronger than, panic, fear, rage, guilt, and shame. And I'm not personally really that, I don't get motivated by guilt, shame, and fear. All it does for me is, um, I don't personally, I just reject even allowing myself to get caught up in those emotions at all. So I will just, if I feel like that's kind of going like that and it's going to affect the research that I'm doing, especially, I really just try to like go, all right, I got an alpha right now and just like do something productive. And so I thought it was great actually when like the real genius thing, there's a line in there where it says, God, what was that thing? I love that, the tagline on that. It says, when he gets mad, he doesn't get even, he gets creative. Um, I should have put it on the screen, but you already saw it in the title card if you saw it. But yeah, don't get mad, get creative. Don't, think about what I'm saying here as far as like if you're looking for information, the flow is better when you're accepting and loving as opposed to being fear driven. That's all. And I really do go for that. Sorry about the break on that, guys. I'm not sure what's going on with that one, but yeah, there's the whole thing about Atlanta though. And I started doing these series of articles on love frequency, what I'd learned about that when you are thinking positively and loving about a person relative to like the location. For example, if you're at the ocean and you send out positive thoughts about people or someone or whatever, I do think that there is a healing element to that that's exponential. I think that for example, I had one relative that was suffering from Parkinson's, and nobody can debate this. Everybody agreed, even people that I'm sure don't like me right now. If they recall seeing me with my uncle who had Parkinson's, they knew damn well that if I just held his hand, that he felt better like that. I mean, it was just like if I went in there, I'm telling you, it was just like holding the hand, touching the shoulder, especially when there was physical contact and our hands touched or something like that. There was this strange boost of energy that he got that I think that the thing about the Parkinson's condition is that there's something about the way it affects the neurotransmitters in the brain and puts you into these sort of repetitive loops that it requires almost like an opposing energy of like maybe it's a POR versus DOR thing. And I would almost classify Parkinson's as almost like it's a person getting an aggressive loop of electricity that's also consistent with deadly orgone radiation attachment. You're in a loop of deadly orgone radiation and you're constantly kind of, doing this and that 60 hertz field and the electrical thing. And then I saw somebody go through it. All I can tell you is that it's almost like the thing that makes it to where a person can just like maintain like this and think and then externalize their thoughts and everything. It's like that part has been just chipped away and torn down at the brain level to where the part that just makes it to where you can hold your head up and keep it straight and balanced, that stops functioning normal. And you start kind of going this thing like that. And you just don't have as much control over all the surface things. So you could be completely cognizant underneath and have complete awareness to what's happening to you and around you, but your ability to get it out and externalize it could be lacking in those times, and for many of these people. And that's what was kind of painful about seeing it with one person in particular was that, you can look in someone's eyes and I could see in his eyes and I could see him communicating and I could hear him. I could hear him at both his words and I could hear him at the intuitive silent mind ways. It was really strong with him. And, he benefited from me being near him because I loved him. And even though he wasn't an uncle that I'd spent a lot of time with growing up, I didn't have as much time with him as a lot of people. But when I took it at face value when he held my hand and said that, you're loved here. You're cared about. Sorry. Give me a second. All right. I just know that if you can maintain a positive mind state and you can just, like snap out of it quickly, your ability to change things around you for the better, especially when somebody's not feeling well, is huge. Your healing potential is huge. And so I would say that if you have it and it's something that works, do what you can to preserve, your chill, stay calm, because don't let somebody tell you that it's not something. If you do this for somebody in your life, if there's somebody that you can do it for, it's hugely important. Or if there's others that you can do it for, it's hugely important that you, even with, no matter how challenging the circumstances, take every emotional challenge as just a hurdle that you have to overcome so that you can be a perfect healer. And if you have the healing hands, if you have the healing ability, that's the thing that I've learned, is that, yeah, there's certain situations that I feel like through belief, which is a plasma transfer that's associated with a frequency that has amplitude to it. So yes, I'm releasing something into the atmosphere. It's a plasma. It's bioplasma, and that there's feelings and emotions attached to it relative to people, places, and things. And so you're reinforcing those things as you're emitting that plasma. If you get stuck into a loop of negativity and they can get you to focus on somebody, then yeah, especially DOR spectrum some people, I think, they literally get a boost from deadly orgone radiation. And the point would be to get you focused on either them, their group, or their terminologies, or the corporation or the group that they're working for, to get you to focus on all of those things, which just brings your energy back to something that's causing you some problems. And so I make appeals to people like, don't ever get stuck in negativity loops, because it's literally giving away your life force. It's literally giving away your bioplasma. And as you're doing it, you're reinforcing someone else. You're taking something away from yourself. You're removing it out of yourself by giving into that anger and rage. And you're oftentimes removing your ability to change your circumstance to actually make things better. And so I'm just going to urge you, no matter who you are, whatever the situation is, even if your situation would be with me, I would say, if you have healing ability, don't let anybody throw you off for whatever reasons. Okay. I wouldn't do anything to throw you off intentionally or anything like that, folks. I'm just saying, like, whatever the situation is, man, just like maintain it, get your chill, get your focus, and you'll be better at this. And I promise you, if there's people that you're related to that aren't feeling well in your life, the more you can maintain this sense of overall wellness, especially when you're focused on them, you do not benefit them through worry. You don't benefit them through stress and fear. Now, don't blame yourself if you stress and fear over them, because no, it's not like you're harming them or anything like that. Please don't go to that type of loop in your mind. I'm telling you that I think to harm somebody, you have to consciously be intentionally sending negativity to them. I think if you're talking about plasma type, let's get it super occulted and esoteric here, I think that would be required. I don't think just worrying or anything like that is what causes that. But I know that you can help people for the better, if, especially in challenging situations, I would say, like, if somebody was about ready to to get you to feel a fear about something, or a news story gets you to feel fear or something, or something, a situation, or whatever makes you angry. If you can take that moment at that time, just to select to remove yourself, but whatever happened energetically, if for some second you stressed or feared for whatever, just you got to learn to like pull it back like a rubber band, like just get it back to where it was before. Like let it, get back into formation. Don't stay stuck there. Don't stay tense, and don't stay focused on something that will put you into a loop of negativity, because it prevents you from being a more effective healer. Or if you don't see yourself as a healer, I would just simply say thoughts become things. And so if somebody prevents you, or a situation prevents you, or your stress, or it prevents you from like doing that, then don't deal with it. Focus on getting yourself and those around you into a healing state. And then you may even actually benefit the person that you're at odds with too, if that's the situation. If it's a news story, it may change. If it's a weather event, that can change. That's what was trippy about my experience in Atlanta. It's because of all the weather events that kept on happening relative to behavior and the belief in people. I was on the 6th floor of a Howard Johnson hotel. I was right next to an airport. I was already in a town that experiences some thunderstorms as it is. But let me tell you something. It was really weird when behavior seemed to trigger huge weather events. Just thinking about a thought or a place or a thing or whatever, watching a movie and then getting sad from it could trigger, and then suddenly feeling happy about something, or I don't know, having enough memory of just like a time where I had a good time with friends or a coworker or whatever. I mean, would just make me so happy, or whatever. I was even experiencing just above average happiness at times, even in addition to being a little bit above average on anger there. But anyways, guys, sorry to get too personal on the whole Atlanta thing or whatever, but and not so much on topic with this. I'm not trying to. It's just that there is a psychoenergetic connection between behavior, weather, films, like where you are geographically, how all these things affect each other, because we are kind of living in a universal plasma field. Space is something that we're kind of inventing as a shared agreement. Time, again, is something that we're all sharing together as it's a shared invention. It's not something that it's something that's there for us to maintain our relationships with one another, time and space, but they don't truly exist. It's a little bit like ego constructs. It's a little bit like, even though we're just clouds of energy, something is telling us that when we look across from one another, that we have eyes, a nose, face, and everything like that. When all actuality, we could just be plasma, and this is just what we see bending within the plasma in front of us. Maybe I look completely different to you, yeah, like things like that. It's pretty, what's subjective versus objective? What can you say is simply an opinion versus an actual fact? Those things tend to get more malleable, I guess, as time goes on. It's almost like somebody can change history. They can change facts in real time. And this is like this consistent with this whole Mandela effect. So yeah. Yeah. If you think that you've been triggering weather lately, Lisa, yeah. Yeah. If I mean, yeah, I think that's absolutely possible. And I'm just telling you that that's exactly what was motivating me to research things at a deeper level while I was in uh, Atlanta. Because when I arrived there, I just thought, this is just so bizarre that I'm here, for a lot of reasons, guys. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it was mostly positive associations. I was like, this is just weird. How did I wind up here? Oh. But I just started to see it as something positive and not as something entirely negative. And then nothing, and again, everything worked out in the end. I'm still alive. I'm still kicking and everything like that. I really thought while I was there, things were going to get bad at certain times too, but it really didn't. But yeah, did the weather get interesting? Oh, hell yeah. I mean, it got Really, really, really weird. In fact, this whole thing involving Sharky's machine and Henry Silva was something that I rediscovered while I was there. Here's how it works, guys. Like I wasn't aware that most of the films that I was selecting were filmed in Atlanta. I didn't know that. But suddenly I'm in Atlanta and I'm just selecting like one day totally unrelated films that I'm not even like I don't remember that they had anything to do with Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta and I just keep selecting movies that take place in Atlanta. Summer Rental is one of them. That is a Carl Reiner film that had John Candy as an air traffic control operator who worked at the Atlanta airport, which I was literally at a hotel staring right across from the air traffic control tower that was featured in the movie directed by Carl Reiner starring John Candy. Summer Rental. It's a movie I think that most people have forgotten about. It wasn't even a huge movie in the 80s, even for John Candy. Even for Carl Reiner, you'd think that if it's a Carl Reiner film, nearly people would just see it because it's him. Yeah, it was just one of those movies that was just not that big for Carl Reiner, I guess. But and again, it's pretty funny and everything like that. I'm not going to say it's bad or anything like that, but it's just not one of those more well-known ones. And then what made it weirder was as I was watching these series of Carl Reiner films, and I was really getting hip to, I think he's a timeline director. I think he actually knew some things in advance. Boom, he dies. Same time as I'm watching, and if you look it up online, when did Carl Reiner die? You'll see he died about this time last summer. It was like June or July, I think, of 2020, and that's when I was watching all these movies in that Atlanta hotel room. I was literally having a whole Carl Reiner film festival. I watched like The Jerk, Summer Rental, Man with Two Brains, Summer School. He did 2 movies back to back that had the word summer in them. Go figure. Summer, would also mean a person that adds, not just the seasons, in case you guys are looking for a little bit of extra code decryption. Anyways, all right, I'm getting way, way, way off track. All right. But so that's the hotel I was staying in, guys. So that this is right here. It's the airport. That's the hotel. And I drew these energy lines, north, south, east, west, the 33-degree lines, the 213s, and then some other lines for some reason. I can't remember why. And then as I was watching this episode of The Outer Limits, they typed these 2 addresses down, or actually a series of addresses down, and one of them is 724 Minden, and the name George Wilkinson is next to it. Now, this is in a totally separate episode called Behold Eck. And this lady hands like this cop like this series of addresses, and I took a picture of it from the actual TV screen, and it was these addresses. And so it was really strange to me that all of them line up with the hotel room that I was staying at, the Howard Johnson Hotel that I was staying at in Atlanta. All of them have alignments. All the addresses that he gives have alignments to something relevant and deeper. I didn't discuss this that well, but let me get the actual picture up. Hang on. All right. Just so you know what I'm talking about here. So in this episode of The Outer Limits, these addresses show up on the screen, and I just type these addresses into different databases and I find out where they map. And so what you're seeing here when I show you these different maps are from Outer Limits. I took the addresses 27 Rossmore, 1242 Doyle Street, and 724 Minden. And I just found out how many of these street addresses exist, or just streets, whatever it is. Where is the closest I can map to that might match exactly or is close to exactly any of the following addresses? And it turns out that they all exist. There is a Rossmore, there is a Minden, and of course there's going to be a Doyle Street. I don't think anybody would ever question that. Doyle, is going to show up someplace, right? But the other 2, I don't know, Rossmore, I guess. Minden, surprisingly, there's not a lot of Minden streets. But if you're looking for where this is, it's in the episode called Behold Eck. It's season 2, episode 3 of The Outer Limits. Okay. And then when I mapped them out, I realized, so here's the hotel that I'm staying at. Okay. So if you notice, that triangle is the hotel I'm staying at. So if you look over to the west, that's due west. That's only, I think it's less than a mile away from that green line. is Minden Avenue, Carrollton. So it's an alignment. To me, if it's within a mile, if it's something that you can see the pinpoint pretty close to the line, I call that an alignment. Now, this isn't precise or exact, but it's pretty close to due west from my hotel room while I was there. Okay. So that's weird, right? It's not just that it's weird, it's that Carl Reiner died while I was in that hotel watching a Carl Reiner like film festival, right? And that address matches Carrollton. And again, this is very common. This whole Carl thing keeps appearing. Carl, Carol, Carrollton, Corolla, whatever it is. There's always some type of CARL, CAROL. The company that I worked for many years called US Cellular, they used to do FCC auctions. And they would apply for a lot of companies do this. They don't always use their own company name. They'll use a couple other like I don't know what they're called, financial entities to do their auction bidding for FCC spectrum. But Carol was one, like Carol Wireless was one of the ones that they used, which I always thought was interesting. I don't know why. I can't remember what the reason why they did that was, but so again, it's been kind of a consistent theme. Carol, Carl, Carrollton, Corolla, whatever, but a lot of the Carls. All right. So one lines up over there to the west. Again, not terribly in and of itself. That wouldn't impress me. So I get it. If I were you, I wouldn't say that was a big deal or anything else like that. But then 27 Rossmore also has an alignment. Now, this one doesn't line up with my hotel, but what's trippy about this one is, that pink line that you see there, that's the Georgia Guidestones. I literally put a pin in the middle of the Georgia Guidestones in the state of Georgia, that controversial statue with all those words on it. I just did my own little esoteric investigation. And I found out that when you draw a line clear around the world from where it points, that's where it goes to. It goes to near this address that is referencing the Outer Limits episode, which is in Binghamton, 27 Rossmore Place. When I try to map it, it goes to Binghamton, New York. Okay. And that pinpoint, as you can see, gets close to that blue line and that fuchsia line. And those two lines originate. The fuchsia line originates from Georgia Guidestones, and the blue line, you'll love this, originates from George Soros's garden. He literally has a garden that, it like aims like this, and then it has points that go in different directions. And so I do the same thing. Rich people, I always do this with their properties. I'll go in, I'll find out if they have a garden. If the garden points at something, I want to know where it points to. They almost always, if they're super into these things, will point it at something relevant. All right. Well, looks like George Soros pointed his at a number of relevant things. I mean, one of his lines points directly at the Twin Towers former location, where I guess Freedom Tower is now, so the World Trade Center. One of his lines pointed right at that, and then it keeps going on until you get to like somewhere in Central America, where it winds up in this huge area where there's this big devil-shaped horn things. I mean, it was trippy, the kind of shit I was learning about the garden at George Soros's. Sorry about my language, guys. Trying to watch that a little bit. All right. So that's one of the other alignments, right? So again, the fuchsia line is the Georgia Guidestones. The blue line is coming from the garden that's in the backyard of George Soros. Georgia Guidestones, George Soros. I'm very proud of this. I can actually, I can contemplate. I can have a contemplating beard now because I'm not shaving it. All right. Hang on. All right. Now here's where it ends, right? Doyle Street. This is where it gets a little bit weirder. So the other address that maps to 1242 Doyle Street, it didn't go right to 1242, but it did go to a Doyle Street, and that was also in the Atlanta area. And so that green line that you see there is my hotel from the Howard Johnson. So you can see how close it gets, guys. It's literally like you can walk, from like about, I don't know, several houses away to where the Doyle Street line is. It lined up to my hotel, the Howard Johnson. And this blue line you see over here, that's coming from the Sharky's Machine building that Henry Silva gets killed at. So again, there's an assassination at the Peachtree building in Atlanta, Georgia. It's an iconic big spire, like tower building there, like this big, big, tall tower in Atlanta, and a huge spire at the top. It's one of the tallest buildings out there. And there's this iconic scene where it was filmed in 2 different locations, so it's kind of deceiving where it actually happened. But yeah, if you go over there and map it, due east of that Peachtree building is where that intersect is, and that's where the Doyle Street address lies. So again, guys, it's not like the 2 things line up that precise, but it's so close, you can call it precise. That one to me is very, very close. You could argue the Minden one that's in Carrollton, but I still say that's relevant. This is blocks away from these 2 lines. One is from the tower, it's Peachtree, and this is the 33-degree line from the Howard Johnson that I was staying in. That 33, guys, I'm telling you, you can call it what you want to. You can say it's Masonic, you can say it's this or that, but it predates Masons. And there's just something about the way that 33 creates synchronicity events and data events that the Masons just know about. Any esoteric society deals in 33s. They all know about it. It's not exclusive to Masons. Not they all know about it, but they should if they don't. I would think that they do, anyone that's relevant. So again, guys, that's what you're seeing up there with those maps were culled from this episode, right? And so I tried to explain it. 2 episodes of the Outer Limits featured Henry Silva, not this one. 1242 Doyle Street aligns east of an ATL building used to film Sharky's Machine, where Silva played the hitman. He played Father Gabriel on Breaking Point about the same time as his Outer Limits appearances as Chino Rivera and Juan Mercurio. All right, guys. Now, this is where it's getting really, really weird for me, because when he plays Chino Rivera in the Outer Limits, and I'm going to show you some slides from that here in a little bit, that's where it gets super Defense Project weird. Because whatever he's involved in as Chino Rivera, he's basically a prison inmate that they do some Project Rainbow type things to. He's basically has electromagnetic frequencies ran through his body. And the concept is that there's a chamber that you run these frequencies through, and it's a teleportation chamber that will send objects from our planet to this one called Chromos, or I think it's Chromos or Chromo or Chrono. And the plan was that they were going to send one of their, people or aliens here, and that we were going to send one of our, people to them. And it would be like a trade. That way that they would know we weren't going to hurt their person and they weren't going to hurt ours. And it would be like a way for the aliens to interact with us. We learned things from them and they learned things from us. All right. We learned things from them and they learned things from us by doing this whole swap. But America doesn't want to use one of their top brass in the military or their soldiers, and they don't want to use anybody of any relevance. So they decided to take prison inmates. And so Henry Silva's character is a prison inmate that gets chosen. He's played by Chino Rivera. All right. But what led me to the whole Henry Silva thing was that this building here that you see, that I just showed you, that Outer Limits address, before I even knew much about the Outer Limits, I hadn't even watched really any episodes of it. I had discovered this whole thing with Sharky's Machine in him. You can see there's Doyle right there, and I'm kind of lining it up with that building I'm showing you. So there's Sharky's Machine finale, and that's Doyle Street, just to put it into context here. All right. So again, I said I would dismiss this as mere coincidence if my mother's father, James Pettigrew, hadn't taken me and my sister to see Sharky's Machine in the movie theater when I was 7 years old. While I was in Atlanta about a year ago, I watched Sharky's Machine again and mapped the filming locations and alignments. Sorry, guys, that acronym does mean Sharky's Machine. I apologize. It doesn't mean anything else. That does look bad. Sorry. I won't say what, but no, I didn't mean that. I wasn't being cheeky and coded. But yeah, there's the scene. So basically, Henry Silva plays the hitman, which is a common theme for him. He always plays hitman. It seems like he's almost never a good guy. I don't know why. He's actually pretty good at playing a good guy too. But as you can see, there's the filming locations. And then if you were to do your own research, you could just go to that tower and you find the very top of the spire, like the very, very tippy top of the tower. And then you just run your lines from the very center of that point. And I can show people or send them a KMZ or KML file of what that looks like. And it's just basically like a Google Earth file that I can email people or upload it someplace where you can go verify this on your own. And then it would just import all that data into Google Earth, like one big file, and show it to you. So anybody who's interested in that, who kind of knows me on the sidelines or I share emails with or whatever on a more regular basis, like, especially if you're a contributor, I'd be willing to go through that extra effort for you. But yeah, it's, I could show all this to you in a more up close and personal way that you could verify on your own with all the locations and the pinpoints. So you're not just taking my word and seeing my maps. You could actually go in and zoom down at each level on every pinpoint yourself. All right. But as you can see, a lot of it was filmed at these Peachtree Plaza hotels or that Hyatt Regency Atlanta that's at 265 Peachtree and 210 Peachtree Street. Sorry. And so then I just put that here's the proof this all started last year while I was staying at a Howard Johnson in Atlanta when the internet failed. I rediscovered Sharky's machine and began mapping the filming locations and esoteric azimuth alignments like 33-degree angles, north, south, east, and west. And so again, I put here that this is dated June 15th, 2020. That way, guys, anybody who wants to know, did like this whole thing with Carl Reiner happen or whatever? Yeah, guys, that was, if you look at when Carl Reiner died, you'll see, and anybody who has deeper access at a spookier, scarier level to my data, then yeah, you'll be able to see that whenever Carl Reiner died, it matched the exact time I was watching his films. They literally killed Carl Reiner while I was in the middle of watching a film festival of all of his movies. I must have been probably somewhere in those summer movies. I was watching literally Man with Two Brains, The Jerk, Summer School, and Summer Rental. At a bare minimum, I was watching those Carl Reiner films. So it's so strange to me that he died at the same time. All right. So if I'm going to keep going on this Henry Silva thing, I got to explain this in deeper detail. Okay. Now, sympathy for the devil, guys, to a degree. I don't know if it's sympathy, but I'm really starting to ask myself, guys, is the reason why so many people are protective of my grandfather, James Pettigrew, is I'm thinking that even though he was an abuser and he was a bad person, in my estimation, I think few people would argue this. I think he did actually have access to whatever this Westinghouse related Project Rainbow is and was. I think that my grandfather, James Pettigrew, was in it, that it goes so far beyond any connections he might have had to the Finders cult or anything else like that. I think that the reason why this is such a conundrum for so many people is because my grandfather, James, and some people close to him are connected to this, but they're also shady. And so when you have a group of people that are heavy into your defense project that are dropping this kind of level of information within their Hollywood projects, but they also get caught up in some economies that are really bad, or they were involved with some of the things that these plot lines actually discuss, like my grandfather James appears to have been. Now, I know for a fact he was an abuser. How much he was involved with crime, that would be a little bit difficult for me to contextualize with my memory, because the last time I saw him was sometime, I don't know, I must have been about 12, 13 years old, I think, when I saw him last. And this is when the allegations that he was a child abuser was being raised and made more public. And I think there was a big cover up to hide that he was a child abuser. And it's because it led back to greater trafficking operations, as my personal opinion. But I think he exploited his access potentially to Project Rainbow through his Westinghouse. He was a Westinghouse employee. I'm telling you this. I knew this as a fact. He gave us Westinghouse keychains, Westinghouse, everything growing up. I went on some road trips with him and another girl when he was driving Westinghouse trucks. So whatever is going on here, guys, especially when you can find, if you look up Project Rainbow and Westinghouse on the defense, or rather on the CIA Freedom of Information Act library, you'll find the documentation connecting Westinghouse to this electromagnetic frequency, space-time manipulation of human subjects, guys. It literally involves testing all these things on human subjects. My grandfather, James, was in fact working with Westinghouse. He does appear to have heavy Hollywood connections in addition to some of these things that go on to trafficking. Now, again, guys, the Hollywood and trafficking things, this is where you're going to find less tangible data on. But I'm one of those few people. This is why I'm bothered that I'm not more protected by official chains. I should be, because I'm one of the few people that can connect the nearly intangible loose data out there that's aliases and all the other crap that him and his associates have hidden behind for decades to get away with doing all this. They also, I think, get some degrees of official protections because there's some degree of defense to what they did, guys. Department of Defense connected activities. And so if the people that are connected to the timeline and Hollywood aspects are also revealed to have taken advantage of that, potentially to get involved with human trafficking, illegal uranium, it's like they knew they had a whole bunch of people by the you-know-what, and so they were able just to sort of exploit it, as far as I can tell. And again, guys, I don't know who exactly I would classify as being on the side that did that, but what I'm telling you is that I don't think that my grandfather, James, knowing that I have this weird connection to this Chevy Chase and Henry Silva thing potentially, I don't think he took me to see this film for no reason. You don't take 7-year-olds to see a movie like this unless there's a bigger reason. Even if you're a person that has questionable values and is a child abuser, it's still just a bizarre movie to take a kid to. About Atlanta Vice Squad and the cop character falling in love with one of the women that's being held by the mafia as a sex slave. He surveillances her and starts to like have feelings for her. I mean, it's a strange plot line to bring a kid to, because there's no way in hell a 7-year-old's ever in a million years going to even think about like how to unpackage a plot line like that. You won't even understand it. You would have to ask so many freaking questions to the adult in the room. There would be no point unless you're a super sophisticated kid. And mind you, we were definitely more in the know than the average kid. All right, that I definitely say, but still a pretty heavy film to take us to. Beyond that, the only other film I remember him taking us to see in the theater was Excalibur, which also, again, was one of those movies that was known. It was directed by John Borman. It was known that year for just having tons of nudity and inappropriate, like, not inappropriate, sorry. It was appropriate for the film, but not for kids. Lots of sex, pretty explicit at times. Some pretty things that are bordering on assault, some pretty brutal like knife sword scenes and shit like that. I mean, just weird movie to take some kids to. Although Excalibur makes more sense than Sharky's Machine, because at least Excalibur had, King Arthur's court and horses and swords and jousting and things like that. Kind of makes sense. Sharky's Machine makes no sense at all. So even for a guy that was as effed up as my grandfather, my sympathy for the devil thing is that he did this for some other reason. Maybe not sympathy for the devil, but he wanted it anchored in my mind to see these two films. That was something I know about James. He's big into MK Ultra and anchors. Why he does it and for what purposes, all I know is that some people really feel like defending him no matter what. Like he's some holier than thou, like he's like a Jesus figure to them. And he's horrible. And he's a really bad person. So provably, demonstrably bad. He did not feel guilty for what he did. And he is a child abuser. It's known. I don't think that there's even anybody that's inside my family that denies it. Just so you know. Nobody in my family denies, as far as I can tell at this moment, that James J. Pettigrew was in fact a child molester. All right. That's something that the people that are close to that situation, who knew his address all the years that he got away with that, that's something that they got to have to be held accountable for. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again. Gabe is not the bad guy in this situation. I'm one of the only people who's spoken up since childhood. Since childhood, I'm one of the only people that has spoken up about this before I even knew what I was asking the adults was wrong. I'm like, adults, I'm pretty sure it's wrong that he's got her in there. Adults, I'm pretty sure it's wrong that he did that with that. I'm sure it's wrong. How come I couldn't? Why did that? Yeah, all those questions were getting asked when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, and the adults in my life failed me miserably. That's something that they just need to fucking own up to. Sorry, adults, that's just on you. We all make mistakes. You could be forgiven. You could be whatever, but you've never really ever explained yourselves well enough. Why did James J. Pettigrew get away with all this? All I can think of, guys, is that he had, and any information surrounding him has some degree of defense project and military protections relevant to this timeline thing. And somebody must use that to their advantage to get away with things. They use those accesses. They use that power to make that material. They may even be doping it with fake data sets. I don't know. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of reject a lot of the more recent material that's coming from Hollywood. I'm not interested in it. I don't consume a lot of it. I really don't like watching the newer films that have come out. And I'm much more concerned about unpackaging, deciphering, and decrypting the ones that are designed to do that, that are from the past, that are from Alfred Hitchcock, that are from, to your point there, white boy, the Alfred Hitchcock things, the Twilight Zone things, the Outer Limits things, and those classic television series, like big time. By the way, folks, the other one that I just noticed too that has some relevance, even though it's more of a family show, is the Buck Rogers TV series. Again, it had timeline synchronicities, and I did see it when I was a little kid living on those properties. So I know that me witnessing that on a television screen when I was little, there's something about that, guys. Like if I watched this when I was 5 years old, living in one of these neighborhoods that was on one of these energy lines like I did, if I watch it today on another energy line of similar relevance, but in a separate location, I get different information. It's like playing back. How do I explain to you guys? It's almost like playing the movie or playing the television show is like loading the CD-ROM into the computer, or pushing execute on the file, and it begins to unpackage the larger timeline release of the other data. And that's the data that's more binded through links to other data sets, and then you unpackage it all. And that's the quote, the decrypts. I get it, guys. There's all these people out there that decode and decrypt. And I think a lot of them were like, I think some people, you have like a lot of natural ability, but I think that there's a lot of efforts to get your decrypt and decoding abilities, and mine too, to where they want to place as much of their own material in front of us, that especially newer material like serial television series, I'm very weary about, because I feel like a lot of this is kind of designed to throw us off course. It's those of us who research it at this level. I really do think that most of the information is in like pretty readily available free things that nearly everybody saw, that was put into the collective consciousness of the vast majority of the television viewing population when television was at its inception, when it was new, because it was all that you had to watch and everybody saw it. Your DNA link to those television series that everybody saw. I Love Lucy, The Honeymooners. Think of a classic series, guys. I mean, what is it? What's something that you know that everybody sees? It's like, it's almost impossible that you're not going to see one of these. And it's old and it's in black and white. Yeah, I Love Lucy. Eventually, you're going to see at least one episode. Why? Because your parents saw it, your grandparents saw it. As long as television's been on and Westinghouse Desilu has had a studio, I Love Lucy's been known. It's been in everybody's households. Now, nowadays, nobody talks about it. But all of us, That's like a pathway of data, of DNA links of people that did witness all that information. We're still binded to them. We're related to them. Whoever that is, they almost for certain saw it, or at least some of those actors, or there was a larger likelihood that they would have because it was serialized television. It played once a week. If you liked Alfred Hitchcock, you're going to tune in. That's what you're going to watch every week. There wasn't 100 channels to choose from. It was that or whatever else you could tune into if you could even get the transmitter on your box. I even dealt with that in the 80s. You know, guys, I didn't even have cable TV until I was like 15 years old. My only access to cable television before that was through my grandfather, James, the same guy that took us to see Sharky's Machine. So go figure. All right. So I put Sharky's Machine also acknowledged the value of understanding ciphers and cryptograms in crime solving. So in a Pimp's Left Behind items, they find 7 mostly fake sounding names, each with 7 digits exactly. And they quickly deduce that they must be a 7-digit phone number in addition to code names of women. So I thought this was a really interesting part of the plot line because, again, some of us decode and decrypt, it's like we get mocked or people act like, oh, you're not really doing something, or that's not as relevant as you say it is. It is, guys. Cops find this relevant. So why would you not provide, the same degree of respect to the data that's being decrypted here? It is abstract, guys. But I really want us to get serious about forming like a group that really approaches this like seriously. Again, with the understanding that, yeah, some of it just involves sometimes watching a lot of Alfred Hitchcock. Sometimes you got to watch the same episode 2 or 3 times, or you got to rewatch a few Twilight Zones or a few Outer Limits, fine tuning what you're trying to figure out. Like, what was that subtle bit of dialogue? Like in the Henry Silva thing, guys, why did his character point out that a little green apple? Why did he talk about the little green apple? Yeah, guys, I mean, it's a type of apple. You could say it's like the Garden of Eden, but nearly all my disclosure material, the things that I transmit information on, that I take pictures on, that I record footage of films on, like that photo you see there, I took that picture on a green Apple iPhone. So somebody, I think, in this timeline knew information was going to be coming from, literally, guys, almost like a time capsule, from this device. Maybe others, but this is a green Apple iPhone. It's weird, guys. The Beatles, what's their logo? Apple Records. What is it? It's a green apple. Apple iPhone. By the way, guys, I know some of you aren't Beatles fans, but there's some things going on with those Beatles songs. All right, but if you notice here, inside the film, they find the names Adriana Domino, Ophelia, Sayaquan, Tiffany, Elsbeth, and Catherine. Now, you notice that names like Elspeth, not really common. Sayaquan, I've never heard that. But again, kind of off. They're off kilter. They're off resonance. They don't seem really all that real. Okay. Now, when you're looking for money laundering, when you're looking for like paper fiction names that become real people, that's what you're looking for. Okay. You're looking for that kind of thing, that kind of weirdness, like Elspeth and Sayaquan, ones that are a little bit off, where they're spelled with different letters than you normally see them spelled with. They're trying to catch your attention. So Bernie Casey's character argues, yeah, every name is 7 letters. And he goes, N is 6. So you see him, he's actually decoding everything. He's writing down how each number matches, right? So again, I'm mentioning this to you guys because I've brought some of my information to family members that do have law enforcement connections, that do have intelligence gathering connections, right? And I would like, would you like to help some of us from the, like maybe find like a working group or whatever like that? You see what I'm saying? Like but I get mocked by some of these same people. They say things like, well, you've got a lot of potential. Maybe someday you might be worth something. I don't know. Maybe someday this might be, I don't know. You got a lot of potential, bruh. That kind of crap. And like, no, dude, this is, I don't know what it looks like to you. Maybe you don't think that it requires much effort, but it's a thing, man. And it does require some considerable talent and understanding. Okay. So I put funny, just like when I discovered Sharky's machine codes and azimuth data in Atlanta last June. Today, it's also thunder lightning storms, but far from Atlanta this time. The final scene of this with esoteric angles and east-west alignments is a combination of the 210-265 Peachtree Street, Atlanta. So again, I made sure to show you guys kind of how I culled this data. That's a screenshot of the building. And so all I'm doing really is, if I notice that Sharky's machine is filmed like right there, right? And there's a scene where a character falls out of a building and that's like put into the collective consciousness, then this building is now, I'm telling you, that building that you're looking at right there, it becomes a repeater of the information that is in the movie. The actors' names, everything broadcasts from the tower that the actors were all in. They leave their imprint behind. Henry Silva's bio imprint is left behind. His bioenergetic field is left in the aether. It is anchored inside the building. Burt Reynolds is anchored inside that building. Yes, he's gone now, but his energy is still in that building. It still stays anchored. All the actors, I don't care if it was Charles Durning or if it was Brian Keith or if it was Bernie Casey, I don't care who was in that building. All of those actors, for as long as that film exists and is in the collective consciousness on any level, everything to do with the DNA, the families, it's just like the power you get from being buried in a location. Actors receive it from filming locations over and over and over again. They get the flow of the bioenergy back from the locations that they film in because of the way it goes into the collective consciousness and repetition. Loop after loop after loop. Energy, momentum, your name gets witnessed. Bernie Casey's name shows up on the screen. Burt Reynolds' name shows up on the screen. The producer's name, Hank Moongene. Who the hell is Hank Moongene? That's the producer of the film, by the way. Hank Moongene. Who really directed that movie? Hey, isn't Hank short for Henry? So I put in Sharky's machine, many of the scenes involve the concepts of line of sight and surveillance, positioning from one building towards another to determine what's going on inside. Silva's character calls his victims angels, which is code for angle. So again, guys, many people, others have done decrypts on this. Angle and angel are correlative. Archangel symbolism. A lot of people believe the word angels isn't literally about people that are etheric, whatever. It's like, it's more a way of communicating angles. Angels have always been about angles. So what made this trippier, guys, you'd have to kind of be familiar with my material already to know why some of this is even more relevant. But so there is, Henry Silva doing his whole hello, my angel thing there, though. And the weird part is as Burt Reynolds is chasing after Henry Silva, it's so, again, guys, these are anchors because this line was not necessary in the script. Burt Reynolds is heading up to the building. He goes, hey, here's my badge. He goes, I need to catch this guy. And he goes like, yes, sir. And he goes, now tell me your name. And he goes, my name is Henderson, sir, or something like that, and he makes sure to say it's Henderson, sir. And he really says it. Henderson just keeps showing up over and over again. Like the other day, I was looking into Sally Kellerman. Then I observed that an 80s movie I watched in repetition had her playing Judge Henderson. All right, the film Karate Kid. There's a whole thing involving the Manzanar Japanese internment camp that's out in rural, like California, in the middle of nowhere. It's in a town called Independence. It's really close to Lone Pine and Independence. Now, there's an angle that's within the sidewalks that literally, it's not even one of these 33 or 213. It's literally one that I determined by just finding out from one point to the other what arrow is made from the sidewalk at the Manzanar facility. When I followed it hundreds of miles out, it literally pointed to a house that I sorry, I didn't really live there. I would stay there from time to time. A relative of mine lives there. And sometimes if I needed to crash for like a week or 2 or 3 or whatever, they would let me stay there. So I did record some clips there, and there would be times where like I actually did material on my YouTube channel from that house, and it was in Henderson, Nevada. And it lines up perfectly with the location that's connected to the Karate Kid. I'm not going to get into that topic. That'd be a whole nother hour. But I do think there's something where people knew things about timelines, and I think it's connected to Henry Silva somehow. And I think Burt Reynolds knew a lot about it because he's in all these movies along with Henry Silva. And I said, don't forget that Silva was in 2 episodes of The Outer Limits, 3 addresses that were dropped in the episode Beyond Eck or Behold Eck. By the way, Henry Silva is not in Behold Eck. He's in the other 2 episodes called The Mice and Tourist Attraction. And again, that's the link. If you go up to the Peachtree building where Henry Silva is assassinated, that's the building, and that's how it lines up to the Outer Limits locations. So again, was this deliberate, or did it happen because of the Fibonacci sequence, or is it just a random coincidence? I don't think anything's a random coincidence. I think if it's explainable and it didn't happen through direct intention, it would probably be explainable through Fibonacci sequence, golden mean, golden ratio, things of that nature. But then I said, take a look at the plots of Henry Silva's episodes. All of them involves things like psi research, military projects, and concepts of teleportation and or electronic signals decoding. The plot for Tourist Attraction, Tycoon John Dexter spears a dolphin-like sea creature off San Blas in Caribbean. It appears to be dead, but on shore it comes to life and begins to make shrill whistling sounds which have a pattern and can be decoded. The Mice. When the prison warden summons 3 inmates serving life sentences, they are interviewed by Dr. Thomas Kelly Kellender, that is seeking a volunteer with authorization of the government to test the teleportation system to another planet. Chino Rivera accepts the offer and learns that the advanced civilization from planet Chromos has contacted the Earthlings and offered the technology for teleportation. They propose an exchange of natives from each planet, and soon Dr. Kellender receives an alien that walks freely in the facility. However, Dr. Robert Richardson finds a strange goo floating on the lake and decides to investigate, but is murdered by the alien. Meanwhile, Chino tries to escape from the facility and stumbles upon Dr. Richardson's body. He is accused of murder, and only Dr. Julia Harrison believes him. What is the real intention of the alien from Chromos? All right. So again, guys, that was all kind of weird in and of itself, right? But The Outer Limits wasn't only on in the 60s. The same producers, Leslie Stevens and some of the others, they rebanded in the 90s, and they did a whole reboot of The Outer Limits, continuation of it. Now, again, guys, James Pettigrew, my grandfather on my mother's side, took me to see Sharky's Machine. Fast forward to the 90s Outer Limits. And I said it got weirder today as I started reviewing another episode from the 90s reboot, season 1, episode 21, called Birthright, wherein Senator Adams is deceived by a chemical executive named David Pettigrew. My grandfather who took me to see Sharky's Machine was named James Pettigrew. Guys, I don't think this is all happening for no reason. I really don't. And I just wish somebody at an official level would just do what it takes to work with me more directly so that I can just be consistently safe and not thinking about what might happen next. That's all. I just appreciate it, guys, because I think there's some serious work we got to do. Whoever we are, we just got to sit down and decide to do it, you know, and take it seriously. Here's the plot line, though. Senator Richard Adams, Perry King, is at the top of his game, but a press conference extolling the views of a new fuel additive, BE85, which is supposed to clean up the atmosphere, he and his aide, Evan Branch, are in a serious auto accident. Hang on. I think I screwed up that. Branch is dead and Adams has a head injury, but his attending physician, Dr. Leslie McKenna, is baffled by his unusual x-rays, 4 frontal brain lobes and only 3 major organs. Before Adams can figure out what happened, a large security detail whisks him and his files away to the Sendrax Corporation, the home of BE-85. It turns out that Adams is an alien and his kind are trying to keep their presence a secret. Because their body makeup is different, BE-85 with long-term use will reconfigure the Earth's atmosphere so it is poisonous to humans and compatible for the aliens. And by the way, guys, they do in fact call this terraforming in the episode. Adams realizes that he is in danger and escapes to see McKenna, the only person he can trust. Together, they unlock the secret of Adams' identity and the horror of the alien master plan and divulge the secret of BE-85 to Kyle Haller, an aggressive young reporter. Before Haller can expose the aliens, he is killed and McKenna is framed for the murder. In the end, Adams thinks he has escaped the aliens, but in reality, his nightmare has only begun. Now here's the screenshots from it, guys. So because that plot synopsis doesn't show you that the chemical executive's name is David Pettigrew. So I put, James Pettigrew took us to see Sharky's machine, which led me to all this. I never understood why the hell he took a couple of little kids to see a movie about ATL Vice Squad busting a mafia sex slave trade with Henry Silva as a hitman, who also appeared on 2 Outer Limits episodes in the 60s. But here you go, guys. Here's the modern one called Birthright. And sure enough, Dave Pettigrew will be glad to answer any questions. He's that the politician puts in front to say, like, hey, don't listen to me. Listen to Dave Pettigrew. He'll explain all these chemical things to you and just, don't worry about it, man. Forget it. Notice how Sharky's machine, getting back to that one, has a multiple things about saying I was by myself in the cruiser that day. There's like all these lines where they kept on like mentioning like they were in their police cruiser, and they kept on really anchoring it. Like the line just was lasting too long, and they kept on saying cruiser, cruiser, cruiser. So I was like, Again, guys, yes, there is such a thing as a police cruiser. I'm not saying that just because my name is in there that it's relevant. It's the way they go about doing it. It's like they constantly say it instead of like, like, so what about your police cruiser? I said I was in my cruiser all day. Yeah, but you have a really good cruiser, don't you? It's the best cruiser in town. I mean, it's things like that they'll do to like really like anchor the line in your mind, right? All right. So then it says Henry Silva's appearance in The Outer Limits, The Mice, where he plays prison inmate Chino Rivera, uses an experiment, has many synchronicity events also. His inmate number is 13790. That's relevant, guys, because 13 is a mafia number, MS13, M13, whatever. But also, you can see the bridge here. It's 13, 37, 79. 13 would be the mafia number. 37 is the zodiac number. 3 sevens is also consistent with 777, the casino number, right? When you hit a jackpot. But then there's my birthday. Now, my father and his father were born 213. My birthday is 79. You can see very clearly on his chest plate here, Chino Rivera's character. Sorry, guys, it's not very clearly, but it says 13790. And just to make sure that like I said before, that it's anchored ever so eloquently, it says, as sure as God made little green apples. And again, guys, nearly all my information I collect on a green Apple iPhone. I take pictures with it and everything like that, and it's a green Apple iPhone. Sometimes, things are just weird that way. So I said, I'm still trying to research this Henry Silva thing seriously. Here is another slide from The Outer Limits. Again, Silva is the test subject being sent EM fields in room 79. And again, there you go. Just to show you guys, I'm not making this up. 79. I could even, if you guys really want me to get super uber proof, I can show you my birth certificate and everything, just so you can see that I am in fact born in 79. I'm not just saying this to be interesting. Not that it is. If you're into these things, it's interesting, I guess. But if you're not, then I can't say this would convince you. But and again, just another shot of Henry Silva in the building while the experiment's happening, reacting to it. So I put, again, Project Rainbow, Philadelphia experiment, Montauk themes throughout, and then the Westinghouse equals Rainbow. Now, why did I say that? I can show you guys at some point. I actually have a document. Hang on really quick. Yeah, here it is. All right. So there's a documentation, guys, just to show you that there is tangible things. It's not just, conspiracy guy telling you about this. My grandfather worked at Westinghouse. You'll see here it says contract with Westinghouse, Westinghouse Electric Corporation Project Rainbow. The memorandum contains a recommendation submitted for approval. Provide for studies and investigations of the probable effects of changes of certain variables on the operation of special systems for producing electromagnetic radiation. Amendment 2 to the letter contract has been drawn to extend the date for definitizing the letter contract. All right. Definitizing, I guess. And it says, since the Westinghouse Electric Corporation is a reputable contractor and has shown considerable interest in the project, the termination provision is considered as a contractual precaution, which will very likely be exercised by the contractor. So again, guys, it's just showing you that hardware was being provided by Westinghouse. They were probably the go-to group for the Montauk, Philadelphia experiment type technology. I have other documents that connects them to Rainbow and Westinghouse, but I just want you guys to think that I'm like, again, it's not just like I'm pulling these things out of random and making associations that don't belong. My grandfather worked at the company they're referencing here. He worked at them. I find lots of connections to my family that were in Hollywood to Westinghouse, specifically through what's called the Westinghouse Desilu Playhouse Hour. And that seems to be a way that they were washing people's personalities. And I think that this was like a way to hide Operation Paperclip Nazi bloodlines. And that's why you find so many of them in Hollywood they'll never tell you that they're Nazi. I mean, again, guys, why would they? If they're going to tell you that there's something, they're going to lie about being Jewish. That's common, by the way. Guys, don't go there. I'm not an anti-Semite or anything else like that. I'm just telling you that was one of the methods. If they were a person that killed Jews in Auschwitz, their cover when they came to America was that they were a persecuted Jew who was in an Auschwitz and they got, out of it or whatever. It's always doing a reversal on their actual record, making themselves look like the victim when they're the perpetrator and that kind of thing. All right. Yeah. So White Boy said, are you sure that James didn't take us just to see the movie because that's what he wanted to see? That's possible, dude. I think so, but yeah, I don't know, dude. It's because he did this type of thing so frequently. He was, again, he had these two houses in Bothell. He worked at Westinghouse. He was in one of these neighborhoods that got the first cable television systems in the country. So I had access if I visited creepy grandpa in Bothell, I could go see cable. But yeah, that was it. That's how I saw a lot of these movies and learned about them to begin with, was because it started at grandpa's house, going there for the weekly movies. So HBO, he had HBO when it first came out. And so they had their premiere of the month or premiere of the week or something like that. And so sometimes he would invite us over for that because it was like some big budget movie or something that was a big deal. Star Wars, we saw at his house once on television. I remember on that, I think. And I don't know. It was things like that, though. It was just a big event to go to his house and see these movies. Popeye, we saw at his house. The World According to Garp, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Again, guys, weird movies to have for family night. Popeye makes total sense. The only movie in the mix that I would say, that and Star Wars, are the only ones I would ever expect a grandpa to take a kid to. You don't take a kid to see The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas if you got some sense about you, or just the optics of it would be effed up. Don't you agree, guys? I mean, really? Hey, family, let's all go down to watch The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas at the theater. Don't worry, we'll get you in. Anyways. Yeah, so all right. So we agree on that. The movies aren't really that good lately. But again, guys, I think some people are doing some quality work out there. I don't want to trash everybody's material. I'm not into watching a lot of things just purely for the sake of entertainment anymore. I mostly do it for the sake of the research. Some things I still enjoy, though. I'm not totally bah humbug on the whole thing. All right. So there's the document on project, the Westinghouse thing. I'm trying to think if I want to. Hang on. I want to stay on this Henry Silva thing. Get his resume back up here. Hang on. Yeah, so this is where it gets kind of weird, guys. I'm kind of looking at the roles he's playing also, right? So in 1964, especially, look at his story arcs here. And again, my family might even find this interesting, those who are still like, checking things out. In 1964, he plays Father Gabriel on the series Breaking Point in the episode My Hands Are Clean. In 1964, he plays Joaquin in a film called The Reward. Spoilers, guys. My brother's name is Joaquin. I'm Gabriel. And my brother is Joaquin. Again, guys, that wouldn't be that remarkable if our names were like Chuck and Bill, but they're not. They're Joaquin and Gabriel. And old Henry Silva played both of our names back to back pretty much in some projects there. But you'll notice he mostly did like, Westerns and things like that initially, where he played like, where he played like the Mexican guy on the other side of the border down there on Texas or something like that. But this is where it gets interesting, guys. In 1956, he was Harry Silver on Alfred Hitchcock's Presents. Now think about what they're doing with that. Henry Silva, Harry Silver. By the way, guys, if you just want a plot line that's just very, very classic Alfred Hitchcock and just a good overall whatever, I definitely recommend checking it out, even if it's just for entertainment. It was actually a really good episode, and as is the other one that has Henry Silva in it that was part of the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. And so this one's called The Better Bargain. That, by the way, guys, is available for free on a few different streaming things right now if you can find it. Alcoa Theater, again, steel companies and things like that, metals companies. There he was, Ocean's 11 as Roger Cornell. He was on The Untouchables as Charlie Sebastino. And there you go, the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. So again, he made another appearance almost 10 years later, or several years later, as Bill Grant and Out for Oscar. That one, guys, these episodes are really bizarre. Like, I'll give you an example. Like when he was in the cast on some of these episodes, I don't want to get too much into people's privacy, but if you're like in my family, hey, go look at some of those screenplays and look at some of the actors' names and the characters' names. They line up with us. They line up with our real names. Again, I'm not going to say all of them, but it's in there. So you tell me what that's about. All right, then you get into these are his appearances in The Outer Limits, The Mice and Tourist Attraction. He did 1963-64 time frame. And again, this is right when he was doing that Alfred Hitchcock, 63, Chino Rivera, Juan Mercurio. These are the ones right here, folks, that have, I think, this is where the work starts to bridge into something much larger. You're getting clues to a bigger puzzle here. And if it wasn't intended that way, that just seems to be the way that it's panning out when it comes to me. And I asked myself, okay, if this wasn't done through direct intention, if this wasn't a planned thing or it wasn't part of a defense project? Is there potentially another explanation that would make sense and not just be something we're pulling out of our, you know what? And I think this is where we would have to have the honest discussion about where is the DNA link? You know, is there a DNA link between me and this Henry Silva? If there is a DNA link, that would, I think, explain a great deal about what's going on. If we're in fact related and just don't know it, or there is some weird thing where maybe like something got crossed, or I don't know what happened, or there's just another one out there that wasn't known about, or I don't know, guys. But or maybe it's just a secret that's only in the know for some people, and then I'm not one of them, you know, and I'm just figuring it out. I don't know. But I've seen secret Hollywood connections to others in the family, to where why would I doubt that it could potentially even be the actual person? He's still alive. So I don't know, guys. If somebody out there knows him, I don't want to bother the guy. He's in his 90s, man. You know, he's had a long career and everything like that. But yeah, he's still around. But you'll see here he played Mr. Moto. Again, guys, Motorola, Mr. Moto. Yes, I know he was a character, but there was things that were going on with radio communications back then. And the main company that all of America, especially in wartime, got their telecommunications gear from was Motorola. So as you get further in, you'll notice that he made appearances on I Spy. That's the Bill Cosby, Robert Culp television series. That's kind of interesting also because Robert Culp is also on a bunch of The Outer Limits and some pretty iconic episodes. And I think he was also in the Twilight Zone. Sorry, guys, I've got this back cushion. I promise. It's if you hear weird noises. I know everybody always blames the chair, but in my case, I can assure you it is. Sure, Gabe. Sure. All right. I haven't seen this yet, but I have a very strong intuition that it'll be very relevant. The Night Gallery episode that has Henry Silva, because Night Gallery, it's kind of an extension of Twilight Zone. It's by Rod Serling, but you can't find this for streaming anywhere, guys. In fact, if somebody knows where you can find it for streaming, let me know. I cannot find Night Gallery. I'm like, what the hell's going on with this? Is it that big a deal? Now, here's again where it gets a little bit weird, guys, because now you're going to start notice that he plays the character Man and Boy. He plays the character Kane, right? And again, I understand that, like, especially if you're a person that deals in movie villains and hitmen, that eventually they're going to name you Kane more than once. So I at least acknowledge that, guys. Just because he's Kane doesn't mean that means something, but it's the whole Cain and Abel biblical symbolism that Abel, Gable, Abe, Gabe, that kind of thing. All right. Then he just starts doing around the early 70s tons of these films that are like Italian language productions. They're dubbed in English if they're on at all. He does some Streets of San Francisco appearances. I actually saw a scene from that where Michael Douglas arrests him. That was kind of cool. He was on this FBI series a few times as Stan Chasen. Now remember, guys, I think he looks a little bit like Chevy Chase, so that's kind of weird. Stan Chasen, Chard, and Richard Macklin. All right, so notice how he plays Kane in this role down here. Where was it? Man and Boy. Then if you go up here, he also plays it on the series Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. And that was part of my review today, was I was checking out his story arc on Buck Rogers. I don't know if any of you saw this. This was kind of a big deal when I was a kid, Buck Rogers. It was pretty decent, you know. Actually, it kind of holds up. It's not horrible, guys, but it was definitely like a family oriented, you know, sci-fi series and things like that. Yeah, so after that, he does like tons of these movies in the 80s where, he plays like these villains against guys like, Steven Seagal, Chuck Norris, Burt Reynolds. It just seemed like that was his big thing to do, like in the late 70s and early 80s, was be like the enemy du jour for all these guys. He's almost never the good guy. Escape from the Bronx, Cannonball Run 2, he plays a hitman in a comedic sense. He's in Lust in the Dust by Paul Bartel. If you guys are familiar with him, he made the film Eating Raoul that had the cross-dresser divine in it. Code of Silence, he plays the villain Luis Camacho. That's a Chuck Norris movie, Code of Silence. Those might remember this cover. Eddie Cusack's a good cop having a very bad day. Whoops, lost my track here. Okay. Yeah, so he's in Above the Law with Steven Seagal. He was the villain in that one. Kurt Zagon. Trained to Kill, he played Ace Duran. Duran's another family name that we have. So I thought that was interesting. Cruz, Silva, Duran. We have all of them in our family. In the animated series, he's Bane. So Kane in one, Bane in the other. Yeah, on top of, playing Gabriel and Joaquin and in a couple of his other roles. So, and then one of the last things he did as an actual movie role where he actually wasn't just like in a bit part or something, was in Ghost Dog by Jim Jarmusch. That was actually a pretty decent movie. The Way of the Samurai, Ghost Dog by Jim Jarmusch. I'd have seen it. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I remember it being pretty good. Forrest Whitaker. Live by the code, die by the code. Live by the code, die by the code. His decisions within the space of 7 breaths. It is a matter of being determined and having the spirit to break right through to the other side. When one becomes like a revengeful ghost, through his head is cut, though his head is cut off, he should not die. This is the substance of the way of the samurai. Trippy. Yeah. All right. So I've got some more material on this. I'm trying to think if I want to do this or not. Yeah. You know something? Because I want you guys to see how this whole thing kind of goes with the energy lines. And I don't have as much prepared material because I just did it for you. When it came to like the whole, what do you want to call it? Henry Silva thing. But I want to show you how it happened to me with the movie Real Genius, because in that one, again, they give the address on like this one street. I type in the street in the movie of a movie I watched a lot growing up. And then I notice that it correlates to something that happens in my life today. Whether one thing led to the other, I don't know. Was it a known thing that they knew where I was going to be at some time in the future? Or is it just because I watched it so many times that it created some synchronicity that I made myself? I don't know. Again, I'm open to all suggestions, guys, or all, not suggestions, but I'm open to all possibilities. But yeah, something seems really, really bizarre now. That's all. Especially with this Henry Silva thing. So I'm going to play a good chunk of this Real Genius clip, and then I'm going to be right back. So give me a second here to get this ready to go. I kind of already explained all this, the part like about the plot, so I'm just going to fast forward it a little bit.
Especially tons and tons of 33s and Freemasonic and Oddfellow type imagery, and its symbolism, constant, right? If you pay attention. Now, again, this film is something that inspires me, and I would say that it's something that overall has inspired me to do the right thing. So, where does this fall in line with what is predictive programming that's damaging and what's dropping a clue? In my own heart, the feeling that I've gotten from this film over the years is that it's inspired me to be a better person, and it has esoteric clues dropped all throughout it, which is where we're going to go next. So when I discovered this, especially like when I was really tuning into this information, I was living in, here, I'm near Portland right now. Won't be probably much longer, but I was living in this neighborhood called the Lentz District, and I was really close to the highway here. And what piqued my interest right away when I first moved in, not just the angles, the streets and things like that, but that over here off of 92nd, it was, there's Ramona Street. Now, the right by this corner of 92nd and Ramona, this is an Oddfellow Lodge, and this is a Masonic Lodge, and this is the fire department. So, what's interesting about that being by Ramona and by the Oddfellow and the Mason Lodge is that the character Ramona, for those of you who aren't familiar, was written by Beverly Cleary. She had a whole series. The character Ramona Quimby was written by her. And Portland has, because I believe she's a Portland.
Sorry, guys.
They have a whole statue dedicated to her. Now, this is where it's interesting, right? Because you know where the statue is? It's on 33rd. So Portland's a very esoteric place. Just letting you know. That's the Beverly Cleary School at 33rd and Hancock. Now, up here, you'll notice that's the Ramona. See? So, I know you're kind of going, whatever, but think about it. I moved to that neighborhood. There was the cross streets. There's where the two lodges. That's where the Ramona character was. I said, oh, wow, I remember the Ramona statue. And I remember looking it up. It's on 33rd, and that's it. Pretty trippy, huh? Now, getting back to that. So I'm watching the movie. I'm living in this neighborhood. I'm near that Ramona, right? Boulevard or whatever. You got the Cleary connection, 33. This is interesting because this highway over here is called 213. The street's called 82nd, but it runs into 213. It's the same thing. It used to be Highway 213, whatever. So now you have the Masonic angles, right? Because if you're familiar with my material, Masons and other esoteric societies use grid energy to line things up at like, the whole north, south, east, west. And then right at the center, you run a 33-degree line this way. You shoot the azimuth. You go this way 213 degrees. So now we have our 213, 33, right? All right, so what does that mean as far as the whole real genius thing? So I'm watching the movie while I'm having this experience, and I noticed that there's a scene where they say, oh, it's at 639 Ivy Crest Drive. Well, of course, I have mapping software. It's not like this is the 80s still. I can look that up. I want to know where it is. So I look it up. There's like 4 or 5 different 639 Ivy Crest Drives in different parts of the country, but it just so happened to default to one in California. This is interesting, actually, because this 639 Ivy Crest is in San Jacinto. You can just tell by the looks of the neighborhood that, these houses were not there probably in 1985. This is 1996. Houses. People are already named, though. Isn't that interesting? Well, I don't know if that's actually, they probably weren't there. That's just overlaying the existing. Anyways, there you go. See the difference? 1985, it was a big dust bowl. So, okay, why is that important? Well, my interest because this area, there's a family friend of ours from Hemet, and if you're not familiar, Hemet's really close to like a major Scientology center. Now, kind of interesting in itself because if you're familiar with Scientology, they're also dealing, I think, a lot of times with grid energies and things like that because they have a lot of parallels to Freemasons and Oddfellows and other groups. So I think that in esoteric symbolism and ideas, levels, degrees. Anyways, you'll notice that this area is really close to this big hill right here. Again, talking about grid energy, what you're going to get from being by a structure like this. So I looked up that address, 639. I remember I'd been to Hemet to pick up my car from a family friend's. He developed Alzheimer's, and so the family was looking to sell the car. So I went down there with my dad and picked it up. So this is where roughly we were. And then I looked over here and I was like, wow, look at this L-shaped section of highway here where these two highways intersect. This plus, it's basically a mark, right? These two intersections. That's Highway 74, and this is Highway 79. 79 runs up this way, 74 runs this way. I was born 79. 1994 as well. So, knowing what I know about Masons and everything else like that, and since I appear to be tapped into some weird grid energy, I decide to go, okay, well, let me go to this marker. I'm going to start running my Masonic lines. Remember what we talked about? Beverly Cleary. Okay, she was on 33rd, right? That's our 33 again. That's another Masonic marker, or whatever you want to call it. Then 213 was my 82nd, all right? So that's my birthday, where this intersection is. Then I run a line 33 and 213. Now, why is 213 relevant aside from just that it's relevant to Masons? It was also in the movie. So the plot line involves a location that they have to give very specific GPS coordinates to, and that was this address. The thing is, this address does not correlate anywhere close. Well, it's kind of close, but it's far away, all right? So I asked myself, why would they give the bogus GPS coordinates if it's nowhere near, that area? And I thought this was a marker because look, 7-9. 9/11. If you look at this backwards, if all you do is flip it, 7-9, 9/11. All right. So now you have the marker. $213. So Laszlo comes out, says, "Hey, you guys have been working hard and everything like that." And look at this. There's 33 on this sign. There's 213 on the door. So they leave their markers. Now, is that intentional? Was that deliberate? Did the set designer do that? Did the director plan it? I don't know. See, I'm asking. But it's weird that it's so specific to my birthday, the 7-9. Because remember, here we are again. Now, I know people are going to say, okay, whatever, but 9/11. Now, that's relevant more than just that it's 9/11. See, I know a person that was born on 9/11. And I believe that they're very significant to the overall narrative that we're talking about here. So it gets interesting. Look at this. Ramona Expressway. So the 33-degree line, when you run it from 7974, goes across this hill, runs into Ramona. Now, remember I told you about how Masons and Oddfellows have very similar theologies? And they play with grid energies? Well, look what the LDS church is doing. They aimed it. Same direction. There's Ramona. I'm not sure where Scientology is in relation to all this stuff. That's not really the point of this. So now you follow the 33-degree line. This is where it gets interesting, right? So remember we said Masons, Freemasons. I lived in Vegas for a few years too, by the way. So this line, 33-degree line, passes through Vegas. I lived there 3 years. That was, let's see, I lived there between 1990, I've moved a lot, guys. 91 to 94 is when I lived there. All right, I'm still following the 33-degree line. All right, now check this out. Wind up in Scotland. Now, do you know anything about the Masons, right? You have different orders within the Freemasons. You have Scottish Rite Freemasonry, and you have York Rite, if I'm not mistaken. So that 33-degree line goes right past these islands here. Over, what is this, Tyree? I don't know anything about this area. Oh, look at that, cross a pole. That's interesting. Yeah, cross pole is a type of antenna. Cross polarized. That's just something I know from my wireless days. Also, my name, my last name, Cruz, when translated as cross. Okay, so you go past Higher on the 33-degree line, and this is where it gets trippy. But go right to York. So there you go. There's your Masonic connection. York Rite, Scottish Rite, 33. All right. Now let's go back. Okay, so you notice the 213-degree line goes past Oceanside. You get kind of near Carlsbad. Then you're kind of off into nothing for a long time. The islands, just nothing but ocean here. I don't know why that's still there. Look at this. This little sprinkle of islands here. Just nothing. Okay, I thought this was interesting. So then finally, when you actually pass a landmass, it's these islands like New Zealand area, right? Look at this. Canterbury, Wellington. Well, this is interesting because when I was 8 years old, actually right before I moved to the farm, which would have been 1985, I was going to a school called Wellington. And it was in Woodinville, Washington. Pretty interesting, huh? What's even more interesting is that in that school, it was for what was called talented and gifted kids and tag program. Yeah, I have my yearbook for this still too, by the way. I can prove all this. The teacher taught us German. How trippy is that? Now, I was taught German when I was 8 years old. Why do you think that was? Now, here we are at Antarctica. See this? All the coast of Antarctica. That's what the 213-degree line leads you to. So isn't it kind of trippy right now? Now, again, I don't have any delusions of grandeur here, people, but you are aware that there's been a lot of stories in this area.
All right. So I'm kind of delving into some things that are, not really relevant to the Real Genius thing. So I'm going to cut that one off. If you want to watch the rest of it, it's inside my Maps and Energetics playlist. And I have a lot of material also about like Georgia Guidestones and things like that there, if you're curious about that topic too. If you guys want me to, I can play you some of my things on the Georgia Guidestones alignments to show you how it shows up on. Maybe I should just do that really fast. Hang on. Let's see here. I won't play the whole clip. I just want you to see the video footage that I have of the alignments in Google Earth so that you can get an idea of how I ran that line that you see in the other thing.
You know, I deal a lot with numerology.
Sorry, guys, you know, my early material on maps and energetics, I just always, like, I'm over explaining like my intentions because I was always worried that somebody was going to think that I was like, you know, somebody evil. Now I just don't care. You know, think what you want to. People think what they're going to think. What I try to do though is I try to do decrypts. I try to just unpackage it all and things like that. So yeah, I get that there's things that I use that a lot of people are programmed to believe have nothing but negative intentions. And all I do is try to say that nobody owns a number, nobody owns a concept. So whether your concept of a Mason is evil or benevolent, or you don't care one way or the other, my point has always been like numbers like the 33 degrees and the alignments that are connected to 33 far predate anything to do with the Freemasons or any of those groups. It's way, 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 way further back. This is all ancient technology, and it all operates on the principle of threes. It's as simple as that. It's really that simple. Everything is threes. It's all about trinities. Trinities left and right. Trinities all over the place. Everything's a trinity. And then what happens when you just like bridge them into like, you know, double, triple, quadruple trinities? What happens when you're 33 degrees? What happens when you're 33.33 degrees, 3.33 degrees, 3.3.03 degrees, whatever it is, as long as it's got a double three in it or a triple three or a quadruple three or whatever threes and repetitions just seems to give things energetic influence in ways that they normally would not have, I guess. I'm not sure how else I should really classify it. But, you know, Fred, if I do Mary Hill, it's going to be another day. Okay. Because I just I can't bridge that into this material that I'm doing right now in a way that's successful, but I'll work on that. And I'll try to do a night that I just cover the Mary Hill alignments alone, because that could be just like a night that I do like an hour and a half. Okay. But let me show you a little bit of this Georgia Guidestone footage here while I have it going, so that you can at least see the maps. Those unfamiliar, let's see here.
Because believe me, I see the correlations too. So all those of you who are like in the know and studying these things and seeing patterns.
Anyways, guys, I was just trying to help people understand that, like, yeah, like if you've ever investigated things close to me or people around me the same way that I have, then you must see the connections to the Georgia Guidestones too. I just was like on the fence as to whether or not it was a benevolent thing, an evil thing. I don't really know. Sometimes people do things that get people's attention, right? And they're just larger. This is where I'm a little bit friendly, I guess you could say, to some degrees of Freemasonic method, because I see the value in raising a huge question mark to people to get them to investigate and learn things independently. It puts a little bit more, the individual feels a little bit more vested in the process of learning, and then I think that they grow more and the lesson sticks with them better. And Masons, I think, part of their education and what they teach people at the purest levels before you get into corrupted Freemasonry, which I know there's tons of it out there, guys. I'm not denying that. And those of you who have experienced corrupted forms of Freemasonry, I think that's really unfortunate, because I think the reason why they want a lot of us to be scared about things like that, and they want us to have negative associations with it and the people in it. Well, number one, there was a lot of Nazi infiltration into Freemasonry. So please always remember that, guys. Nazis take things over and make it theirs. And then you begin to define it negatively because you're looking at a variation of it that was literally presented to you by a group of Nazis that wanted to see it fail. And I'll remind you guys, Masons fought Masons fought the Nazis in World War II. It was a big part of they were put inside Auschwitz along with Jews. A lot of them were actually there. I think there was at least 80,000 Freemasons that were put in concentration camps along with other groups. In case you're wondering how they were perceived by the Nazis, and so that's why I don't just lump them all together, guys. I think a lot of the same way that we have issues with other groups here in America, you want to start going into the big Z words, is because people fake being something that they're not so that they can own the reputation of that group, and then it gives them shielding. They can call you a name that you're not, you're anti whatever, about me. and you're not. You're saying like, no, I know you're a Nazi. You're actually a real life Nazi, and you're pretending to be what you say you are so that nobody can criticize you. Oh, I would never do. Of course they're going to say that. But there's a lot of that going on out there, guys, without getting into too much detail. All right, so there's the Georgia Guidestones. It's this area. You can look it up there. It's 34, 13, 55.4, 82, 53, 39.8. It's in Elbert County, Georgia. And then I'm gonna get the maps up here so that you can see those alignments.
So there's the Georgia Guidestones. There's other people who have done all the map research. I'm not going to redo it for you here. You can find their clips online. Just look up Georgia Guidestones and azimuths and degrees, and you'll find it. But there it is. So what's my interpretation? Well, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this out. But what I do know is that I don't assume anything awful about intentions. I need to be given a reason to believe that all these things are negative intention. I have to really know. And I'm not willing to make that conclusion until I've really done a lot of research. So I'm still researching this song right alongside everybody else. So just try to understand that this is teaching you a lesson here. And there's more to this symbolism than just the actual monument. See, because what we're experiencing a lot right now with this technology that's happening and the research that I'm doing, people are being kept in like a frequency envelope a lot of times, and this can separate you from others.
All right, so again, I'm not trying to get all philosophical here. I just want the angles to be communicated so you can kind of see my methods there. So effectively, if you were to go to the center of where the Georgia Guidestones are and just draw a 33-degree line, that's what it looks like. That's all that I did. And so that outer limits address, that's 27 Rossmore. So what I'm telling you is that Georgia Guidestones aligns at 33 degrees to 27 Rossmore in Binghamton, 27 Rossmore address provided in the outer limits. Behold Eck episode. And this is where it gets really kind of weird, is when a science fiction show from the 60s has a real life data correlation today at an address that may not have even existed in the 60s or the 50s or whenever. It may be a completely new road that's there. And then on top of it, aligning to this exact, place here, if you draw a line from George Soros's garden, and again, guys, you can go into my Maps Energetics clip and it discusses all of that in there too. If we go back really quickly, I can show you George Soros decrypted. George Soros has this garden, right? So I'll just try to take all of the whatever you want out of it. All right. So this is the clip that you can look at on your own. I'm not going to play it all right now, but George Soros, if you were to zoom in to his address in upstate New York, he's got a garden, and the garden aims in those directions. It goes this direction, you know, and then that direction down there. And when that address 27 Rossmore literally will line up with one of those Soros gardens in addition to the Georgia Guidestone. So George Soros's garden, Georgia Guidestones all line up at 27 Rossmore, address provided through the Outer Limits episode Behold Eck. It mapped to 27 Rossmore in Binghamton, New York, a real address that does exist today. And all those things line up with it. It's just interesting, guys. So I'm going to be winding it up here just now here in the next minute or two. So I just wanted to close up by saying that, I really am taking this pretty seriously. I got a little bit distracted from some of my energetic research and things like that lately, mostly just because I couldn't afford some of the classes that I have to go to expand my knowledge. So in the meantime, I'm just using it as test gear and everything else like that. But on that note, in order for me to really try to kind of get things going at the level that I would like to, I'm just realizing I'm going to need stronger partnerships where I think that there's more of us that are working together and holding one another accountable, I think, for results. I don't think that in a bad way. I just mean to say that we need to project manage it in some sorts, decryptions, things of that nature that I think that are of relevance, and have a working group of people that actually share what they know. And I think we could actually get people to actually be interested in it as long as we're presenting our results in ways that, this is esoteric. It's bizarre. It involves timelines and things. I get it, guys. Some people may roll their eyes without even looking. But I've been trying to keep these presentations short lately. This one's going to be about as long as I've done, but it's because I think a lot of people lose interest if I don't get a lot of the material out, and I tend to meander with my words. So on that note, guys, I really do need to support the channel in a more meaningful way. So any support you could throw my way, I'd really appreciate it. I'll be able to get on more frequently if that happens. I'll get fewer distractions, and I won't have to bounce around as much if I just can maintain some degree of sustainability relative to the financial needs. I mean, even just meeting the basics of paying for the streaming software, which is not that much, but all those things help, guys, on a month-to-month basis. And that's become a lot more difficult for me to do. The money's really frozen for the last couple months since I've been here, in the location that I've been. So it would really benefit me if anybody could just try to just to see if it works, guys, because I just really haven't seen a whole lot of communication from people in a while. So that'd be good. And any support you could throw my way, I'd definitely appreciate it. All the details are below. You can contact me, email me for consulting, or if you're interested in expanding on these concepts in a way that's sustainable and you have some ideas, let me know. I'd really appreciate that. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night. I'll be on again soon.